Hello everyone, welcome to the Ceci Truman Live Show. This show will be starting in just a few moments, so stay tuned. And if you're seeing this on social media, please like, share, and follow. For more information, go to trumanforcongress.com. This show is brought to you by Ceci Truman. Here's Ceci.
Welcome everyone to the Ceci Truman Live Show. We are going to be talking about a very important topic today with a very special guest. Her name is Kayleigh Kozak, and she is passing legislation in Arizona, and California is next, and other states. She's going to explain it all to us. And so let's welcome Kayleigh Kozak. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, it's an honor to know you. You are doing some amazing work, Kayleigh. And sometimes people are called by God just to step up to the plate, but it takes courage and it takes family support and it takes tenacity and fire in your belly. So I'm going to explain to the audience what you do briefly, and then you can expound on that. So Kayleigh Kozak is the namesake behind Kayleigh's Law, if you've heard about that. She's a shining example of determination, and her story is both moving and inspirational. Kayleigh is living proof that a single individual can make a profound impact. So Kayleigh, I would like for you to start by, we are going to show a brief video clip, a visual of what you do, and then we will go into it further. Roll that clip.
Sorry, honey. Congratulations, beautiful. You did it.
She signed it.
You freaking did it. Yeah, she signed it. Yes.
Promoting the discoverability of victims for pedophiles seeking child abuse material. By promoting graphic hashtags.
Arizona Department of Public Safety. Arizona has approximately 9,000 registered sex offenders.
Rise in Arizona. Sadly, our state has some of the highest numbers of people, including children, forced into this dark world. The issue is only being perpetuated by the chaos at our southern border.
Grooming is a methodological and calculated process that a predator uses for the intent of creating a victim. Listen to what this woman had to say.
Marilyn Rodriguez from Creosote Partners on behalf of the ACLU of Arizona in opposition to House Bill 2310. We cannot bury our heads about the societal context, which brings us to the fact that the word groomer is a slur. The Anti-Defamation League has labeled the term groomer as hate speech. NPR has noted the accusation of groomer has been leveled against teachers, companies, and politicians.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so that was a wonderful visual, Kayleigh, of the impact that you are having not only on your state, but you are spreading out to other states as well, including California, which is where I live. and which is where I am running for Congress as well. Kayleigh Kozak is the namesake behind Kayleigh's Law. It is a shining example of determination, and her story is both moving and inspirational. Kayleigh is living proof that a single individual can make a profound impact. Kayleigh, thank you so much for joining again. And can you just explain what Kayleigh's Law is?
Thank you so much for having me on. To sum Kayleigh's Law up, Kayleigh's Law gives victims of most notably sex crimes, but also dangerous crimes, aggravated felony crimes, depending on what state we're in and what code there is within the law. But it gives those victims of those crimes natural life protection from their abuser. And the reason that this law is so important is because prior to this law, a victim's only protection fell within the terms of either their perpetrator's probation status or their perpetrator's sex offender status. And what people don't realize is that the probation status and the sex offender status can actually time out or be lifted, and therefore a victim would be left with no protection. And so this law is just ensuring that regardless of the status of the perpetrator, a victim will have that natural life protection.
That is wonderful. That is excellent, Kayleigh. And we're going to talk about some specific bills that are being legislated in Arizona. But can you share with the audience first your story? What happened to you that prompted you to work so fiercely in this realm?
Of course. So, like so many others, I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And I was sexually abused my 6th and 7th grade year by my PE teacher, who was also my club soccer coach. I turned him in my freshman year. It was a delayed disclosure, and it took me getting out of that bubble to feel safe and comfortable enough to actually turn him in. And I didn't even realize when I turned him in that I was turning him in, because he had groomed me so extensively. And he was the definition of a predator, meaning that he had told me this is wrong and I shouldn't be doing this, but it's different and it's okay because I love you and I care about you. So when I turned him in, he was facing over 25 years in prison. He was charged with 8 counts, all dangerous crimes against children, and position of trust because he was a teacher and a coach. Mm-hmm. And he had actually requested a plea deal. And my parents, I'd been through so much. And so they agreed to the plea deal because they didn't want to put me through any more trauma. And so that plea deal consisted of 2 terms of so-called lifetime probation in lieu of extended prison time and 6 months in jail. So he never even went to prison. And when my case closed, it just kind of closed. Life goes on, and it doesn't slow down. Just because my world was crumbling didn't mean the rest of the world was. So I call it my 13-year gap. In 2020, my life turned upside down for different reasons. And that is because after 15 years, I was contacted by the Arizona Adult Probation Department informing me that the man who sexually abused me has completed his treatment and has been good. Therefore, he's eligible to have the terms of his so-called lifetime probation lifted. And I could not understand because he agreed and asked for a lifetime probation sentence. And when I asked what protection would be in place for me, I was told nothing. There's no such thing as post-probation protection. And discovering that and knowing that perpetrators could in fact have these things lifted and that victims would be left with no protection, I wasn't okay with that. And I had to do something. And that is how Kayleigh's Law came to be.
Thank you. Thank you for fighting on behalf of not only yourself, but what drives you and inspires you is to protect others, other young girls, other children, and women who are being groomed, and even now as we speak, and being manipulated, and basically this is blackmail and extortion of individuals. And how many years of prison time did this person receive?
So he never actually went to prison. He was facing 25 years in prison, but because of the plea deal, he did 6 months in jail.
Wow. Unbelievable. And so how long was the probation supposed to last, and how much was reduced?
So he pled in his plea deal. He pled to 2 counts, and they both consisted of a lifetime probation sentence. But Arizona is very different than most states, the way that we handle perpetrators. And I would need your entire day, specifically sex offenders. But lifetime probation has no legal definition. In fact, it's quite insulting that they manipulate victims and their families to believe that this is a lifetime sentence. The actual reality is that a perpetrator's probation treatment is essentially 7 to 10 years, and they are able to petition the court as soon as they complete their treatment, and they're eligible to have the terms of their lifetime probation lifted. And they don't disclose that to families and victims in their plea deals. They lie to them. They lie to the families and the victims that it is a lifetime sentence, and it is not a lifetime sentence.
That is totally ridiculous and infuriating. What is the treatment that they supposedly are receiving?
So they go through sex offender treatment. It's very extensive. There's classes, tests, all sorts of things. I would love to learn more about it in all my spare time. But this, and they're monitored, if you will, I call it. I don't even know that I want to call it treatment. I would call it educating them on how to circumvent the laws and where the loopholes are. That's what I would refer to it as. And in Arizona, probation's a joke. There's no accountability. They're their own entity. There's no transparency. It's really frustrating. And like I said, Arizona handles sex offenders very differently. We are actually out of compliance. Arizona is out. There's 11 categories that are standards, and Arizona is out of compliance 8 out of 11 categories.
Wow. Can you expand more on, give us an example of maybe 2 items that they're out of compliance?
Of course. So Arizona uses a 19-question general risk assessment. So you have to think of it as a perpetrator is charged, sentenced, and convicted. Once all that is said and done, then they go through this risk assessment. And this risk assessment consists of 19 questions. The lower score you get, the less of a risk you are. The questions on there are very concerning. If the victim was a female, 0 points. If the victim was a family member, 0 points. And so this risk assessment determines their level, which ultimately determines what level they're deemed of an offender. And so currently I actually have it sitting right here under SORNA, which is the Sex Offender Registration and Notification Act. And that is what Arizona is out of compliance with. A tier 3 or a level 3, the highest level of sex offender and what they're charged with. For example, will under Arizona Revised Statute, our ARS code 131404. That is sexual abuse. Under SORNA, that is considered a tier 3, level 3 highest risk level of offender. In Arizona, if someone is convicted of, again, under 131404, and they do that risk assessment, and it was one victim, and it was a female, and it was a family member, they will likely be a level 1, meaning that they're considered the lowest risk level, meaning that they are essentially protected. They're not on the public registry, and you can't access their information, and they require no community notification.
Wow.
So that's one example. There are many.
So you're saying if they're a family member, it's less of a sentencing because they're a family member.
Yes, they're considered less of a risk to society because they sexually abused a family member.
That's makes me so angry.
I know.
Because if they assault one child, they're going to assault not only within the family. We all know this, and yes. So these people in power, sitting in places of authorities, they're not thinking of the constituents. They're not thinking of the safety of children, women, and children. They're trying themselves to find these loopholes to basically retain their power to stay in their places of authority.
And not only that, offenders know how they can access this risk assessment, and they know that certain things. They know if they only sexually abuse females, it's less points. They know if they, sexually assault a family member, it's less points. Therefore, they'll be deemed less of a risk. And so we're laying it out for them. They know how to, sex offenders are smart, very calculated, intentional people. And we do not give them enough credit. We think, oh, they're so idiotic that they would sexually abuse a child. No, they're very intentional. They are very calculated, intentional people. And so they're people, they know that. And they also know that if they disclose in treatment that they had more victims, then legally they cannot be prosecuted. I mean, they can legally be prosecuted, but because they disclosed in that confidentiality, it won't be held against them because of this risk assessment. Arizona is the only state in the nation that uses this risk assessment, and it is dangerous and it is not protecting our communities. And I have been screaming at the rooftops about it for years and drafting policy to fix it.
So the person that offended you, that assaulted you, what is the current status of this individual?
So he is currently a registered sex offender, and he is on so-called lifetime probation. He is fighting it every year. He's petitioned 3 times in 4 years and disrupted my life. It's been almost 20 years. And he is continuously, he has rights and he wants a normal life and he wants to be off probation. And so he continues to petition the court.
And does he live in the same vicinity as you live?
He lives in the greater Phoenix area, and so do I, yes.
Wow. Unbelievable. Okay. So you have been working on drafting policies, which I am incredibly impressed with how you do this. So you have drafted, it's called SCR 1021, and it's Class 2 sex trafficking felony, which results in natural life imprisonment. Natural life in prison. Arizona will get to decide, the constituents will get to decide how it will, it will not go to the governor, right, to be signed. Instead, it will go to a vote on the ballots. Can you explain that?
Yes. So I was asked to join the SCR, the Children Are Not for Sale ballot initiative, and to be one of the co-chairs for this effort that we're actually pursuing across the nation. Arizona and Nebraska are currently leading the way with this. So the reason that we did an SCR, which is a Senate concurrent resolution, and we also had an HCR, a House concurrent resolution, was because by doing this, we're sending this to the ballot. Our voters will get to decide how we are going to punish those that traffic children for sexual purposes. I mean, trafficking children in general, but if you traffic a child and you sexually abuse them, you will spend the rest of your natural life in prison. We weren't willing to risk this with our governor. We want the voters and the Arizona people to decide how we are going to punish these sick human beings.
So that actually passed, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, incredible. Because right now you have Katie Hobbs as your governor, who there was a big battle between her and Kari Lake. And unfortunately, Kari Lake is not your governor. So this is a safety net for, from the far leftist liberal agendas.
Yes.
Which is amazing. That's great. Other states need to catch on to this then. That's awesome. Yeah. So the other bill I wanted to discuss is, so Katie Hobbs did sign this one. It's Senate Bill 1436. And but Senator Bullitt was the sponsor of, and this makes stalking, voyeurism, strangulation eligible crimes, and it's eligible to petition under Kayleigh's law. Can you explain this one?
Yes. So when we drafted Kayleigh's law initially in 2020, we created a new law. And when you do that, you are bound to have some roadblocks. And so you have learning curves along the way. I mean, we literally wrote a new law. But the way we categorized it within our statute ended up backfiring on us, quite honestly, at the initial draft. 1412 was the initial bill number for Kayleigh's law. And it passed beautifully. It passed with complete bipartisan support. In 4 months, it was signed into law. That's how flawless this was. And when we sat down to have the implementation meeting, I said, what is the process on this? And, we're trying to figure out the logistics. And they put Kayleigh's law under a traditional injunction against her of harassment, meaning that a victim would have to petition the court every single year. And I said, please do not put another second of your time, energy into this. this defeats the entire purpose. And so I sat down at my kitchen table and I thought, how do we fix this? Fill the loopholes. We need to narrow this and be more specific. So we created a new chapter then. And that new chapter was a natural life injunction that was valid for the defendant's natural life. And we went as far as to specify until the victim or the defendant dies. I mean, I went full throttle with this language because I realized in that moment how critical verbiage and language are when it comes to bills. We also attached a punishment to that. And that bill got some pushback, to say the least. We definitely had opposition, but that's because we were creating a punishment that they couldn't get out of. And they didn't like that. And one person have testified, in fact, and said that this is a hefty punishment, a natural life sentence. Well, so is the punishment of being a victim of this person's selfish actions. So that had passed. And then we had a judge last year try to seal and set aside one of these injunctions. So then we had to go back and amend it to forbid a judge from doing that, which is insane. Wow. And then this last session, this Monday, this Monday, time goes so quickly, 4 days ago, this week, Governor Hobbs signed the amendments that would include victims of stalking, voyeurism, and strangulation to be eligible offenses to petition under Kayleigh's law for that natural life injunction. And I am so proud and so grateful that she signed that bill.
Wow, that's incredible. So now you are coming out to California. I'll be meeting you soon in person. Yes. And yes, so you're going to be meeting with, it's Diane Dixon, right? She's sponsoring is it a bill?
Yes, ma'am. So Assemblywoman Dixon is the bill sponsor for AB 1931 in California, which is Kayleigh's law.
Excellent. Okay, and it's looking very positive, right?
Yes, ma'am.
What will all of this entail? So expand on the bill. And you anticipate a lot of, because, in California, our assembly is 80-20%, meaning 80% left, which is the Democrats, and about 20% to the right. So the Republicans are very outnumbered, although this is becoming a bipartisan decision, right?
Yes. So Kayleigh's law has had complete bipartisan support, actually in multiple states. Even in Arizona, we've never had pushback. And it was originally signed into law by Governor Ducey, who is a Republican. And Governor Hobbs, even with all the feuds that her and I have had and the issues, she still has signed the amendments to Kayleigh's law. And so as a Democrat governor, she's signed 2 amendments to this bill to strengthen it, which I think speaks volumes. Also in Wisconsin, Kayleigh's law passed in 2022. And it had a Republican bill sponsor, but we had more Democrat co-sponsors that were on that bill than Republicans. And Governor Evers, who is a Democrat governor, he also signed this into law with no question. So we've had great bipartisan support. And I think what's so important about this bill is that this is not a partisan bill. Sexual abuse knows no limits, has no boundaries. We all know somebody, whether they have been personally impacted by this or they know somebody who has been personally impacted by this. This is protecting victims of sexual abuse and children, anybody who's been a victim of this. And so, to put politics aside, it has been beautiful to watch our elected officials come together on this issue to protect victims.
That is amazing, Kayleigh. I'm so proud of you. And you can only go further from here. There's no going backwards. And so this can only stretch out to other states. And what will you be doing when you come out to California?
So I will be coming back to California to testify when the bill hits the committee. We should find out next week, because I want to stress for anybody listening, showing up is more than half the battle. Showing up and being there, it's more than half of it. You have to show up. You have to show that you're serious. And when you put a face and a reality attached to this issue, it's really hard to say no. I mean, I'm not just a case number. I'm a human being who's been affected by this, as have so many others. And so to show that we are here and we're fighting for our protection, and I show up and I fight because you still matter, it shows how important this is. And so I will be back to testify when AB 1931 is assigned to a committee. But I will also be back the first week of May in Orange County, and we're going to do some press. We're going to raise some awareness, and we're going to let victims know in California that we are here and we are fighting for you, and we're not going anywhere.
How are you reaching the constituents? By what means? How do people find out about this?
Social media is great. Interviews like this are great. I'm so grateful because here's the thing. If people don't know, they don't know. If people don't know they have this protection, then they don't know. If they don't know that it's an option, then they can't pursue it. If they don't know that we're fighting for this, they can't get involved. So raising awareness on social media, news interviews, radio, podcast, social media is such a bittersweet thing, but to raise awareness for things like this, it's a really, really wonderful tool to have. And I'm just, anybody I know personally in California, I'm reaching out to let them know that we're pursuing this law there. And I mean, people I don't know, even reaching out to the sheriff's departments, the DAs, anyone who works, organizations that work for victims, reaching out to them as well and letting them know that we're pursuing this in the state of California.
So what is it's an assembly bill, right? 1931. Is this a replica of the Arizona bills? How is it similar or how is it different?
It's very similar. I will say I am proud of California. They were very extensive. The language it's really good. I don't know what I was expecting, but it's very thorough. I think it's over a 15-page bill. So, and a lot of that in California though is, your penal codes are all over the place.
Oh, I know.
So it's a lot of bouncing in California, but it's really, I can read it to you. It's pretty simple.
Please do so.
When a criminal defendant has been convicted of a violent felony as defined in section 667.5, a serious felony as defined in section 1192.7, or a felony offense that requires registration pursuant to section 290, that is a sex offender registration, the court shall, in the discretion of the court, and unless the victim otherwise requests, consider issuing a protective order that prohibits the defendant from any contact with the victim of the crime. So then it goes on to say that the order is, the protective order is issued pursuant to the subdivision, shall not expire, and shall be valid for the defendant's lifetime unless any of the following occur. So we list unless the victim dies, unless the victim requests that this not be in place. The court shall serve the defendant with any protective order issued to the pursuant to subdivision at the time of sentencing. So this is what's so huge. We are pursuing Kayleigh's law on the front end, meaning that at the time of sentencing, your perpetrator will be served, meaning that if and when probation goes away or sex offender registration status goes away, you don't have to go back to court. We've already pursued this. We've already served them under this law, and you will be protected, and you won't have to go back and reface your perpetrator. And it is saving money. It is, more importantly, prohibiting re-victimization and re-traumatization of the victim. And that is so often overlooked. And that is why that piece of this is so important. So I'm really, really proud that they did that. And really, that's the bill. It's that simple. It's really that simple. It just is long because it's the penal codes.
Are they adding any other amendments to it? Are they trying to attach other items to Kayleigh's law in California? Do you know?
No. So we actually held the bill because we found a technicality, and we knew when we presented the bill, we wanted it to be as narrow. We're never going to be bulletproof. For anybody, we will never be bulletproof with anything, but we can narrow the gaps and be proactive. And so when we found this technicality, we decided to hold the bill to just go through it one more time to ensure that it was as solid as it could be. And so I think it's really well written and pretty intact the way it is as it stands right now in California.
Okay, my question will be, and I don't know if you will know this or not, but are they trying to attach any gun regulation to this bill? Because the audience will want to know. California, we're having a big issue with gun regulation right now.
So as long as you have been issued this lifetime protection order, you cannot own a gun. And that's
Okay.
not even in California. That's everywhere.
Okay.
And here's the thing, and I know California is a little wonky. Your governor does like to pardon people. I think it's 4 on average, is what I have found in my research. But as long as this protective order is in place, you cannot own a gun. And if you've been convicted of a felony charge, you're not supposed to be able to own a gun anyways.
That's right.
So the NRA actually came out in opposition in 2022 in Arizona.
Right.
When we spoke to their lobbyist in the courtyard, we said, we don't understand. And they said it was flagged in their system. And we said, okay. And they said, if a defendant or a perpetrator has gone through their restoration process and process and had their civil liberties restored, then they have a right to own a gun. Well, that is, we are talking such a small percentage.
Right.
And you're going to go in opposition of a victim having a natural life injunction from the person who's harmed them. And I said, all I'm hearing is that you're more concerned with providing a known registered sex offender, someone who committed this crime and sexually assaulted someone with a firearm, than you are protecting the victim of that crime. And they said, that's not what we're saying. And I said, that's exactly what you're saying. And they immediately rescinded their stance, and they actually went neutral.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted clarification for the audience, because I know that is a question. In California, and this is besides that point, Governor Newsom has closed 50% of our prisons, and, we are experiencing so much lawlessness here in California because we are so dominated by very far leftist policies and laws. And so, my unction is that Governor Newsom has aspirations to run for president. I always say it's a selection, not an election, because there will be no time to campaign if that in fact does happen, which I hope it does not. But you never know. And then I guess Attorney AG Bonta, he would like to run for governor if that's the case. So we're having a lot of chaos here in California. And, we have things happening like, and this is also separate from what we're talking about, but, we just have smash and grab is, an epidemic in stores, and just complete lawlessness, and there's no consequence. So, you know what? Thank you to you for at least you're nailing. This is your lane. This is what you're pursuing and what you're, an expert in. And, not everybody can solve every problem, but you are laser focused on this particular issue. And so my hats are off to you. And I'm just incredibly thankful that you're not backing down off of this. And actually, your territory is expanding. So that's amazing. Is there anything else you would like to add that maybe we might have missed, or you'd like to cover?
Well, I think that what we're seeing right now in this category is almost like the full circle of this topic. And what I mean is sexual assault has been around forever. And at 20 to 30 years ago is when victims really started to come forward. And so now what we're seeing is the full circle and the then what and the later trauma. And I'm living that, and it's awful. And no one should have to be dealing with the things that I am dealing with. And that is part of why I fight so hard, because I want to fix it so that this later trauma doesn't surface and disrupt the victim's life. And people don't realize until it smacks them in the face, and it does impact them again. And so with seeing this, we're seeing how these perpetrators are handled. We're seeing the lack of laws. We're seeing the loopholes. We're seeing the lawsuits of these offenders, and they're winning them because our laws are not up to date. And I feel very, very passionately about narrowing the gaps and closing these loopholes. I feel very passionately about presenting language that's proactive and less reactive. And I think it's time that these offenders know that we're serious, and we cannot tolerate the sexual abuse of children any longer. We cannot allow these people that are trying to normalize pedophilia. We cannot. They are conditioning our societies to accept this as a normal behavior, and it's not normal. And the more it happens, the more desensitized we become. I mean,
Right.
20 years ago, if you heard about a teacher that was being convicted of a sexual assault, you were in shambles. We were furious, demanding answers. Now we're averaging 5 to 10 teachers a day across the nation, more women that are being accused, I can't say convicted, of sexual crimes with their students. Why are the schools not being more proactive in vetting these people? Why don't we have harsher consequences? They're targeting schools, and they know they're going to get away with it with a slap on the wrist because of the way that the laws are written. And so we must pour more into this to let these people know, you may not do this to our children. And if you do, you will have a serious consequence.
And one problem too, as far as schools are concerned, or school districts, school boards, school unions, is that it's easier to hire a teacher than to fire a teacher. And so, you know, we need to change that as well. And maybe that's something for another day. But, you know, because of course, these predators are going to be attracted to wherever the children are. And so they're going to disguise themselves as, you know, a good person. And that's what I call sociopath, you know, somebody who is, like you said, very calculating, very manipulative, you know, and people who are charming, they're very polite. They're not going to come as, you know, a monster. They're going to present themselves as an angel of light and, you know, oh, I'll help you with this. And, you know, that's part of the grooming process. But we need to absolutely protect our children. What were you going to say?
So I think that also, I mean, people have asked me, one of the number one questions I get asked is, didn't your parents know? Why didn't you say anything?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard question for me to answer, because my parents, this man groomed them. He befriended them. And I needed help. I needed someone to save me, but no one knew that I needed to be saved from anybody, because these predators, they prey on families, they prey on entities, they prey on children. And so, you know, I tell people, we've been taught to look for the scary guy in the van, right? The peeping Tom. No, we need to be looking for the charming narcissist who's grooming the community. That's who we need to be looking for. And it's really hard. You know, we hear so many cases, and even in my case, the entire soccer club stood by his side.
Wow.
I went to a soccer tournament the week that I turned him in, and they all were wearing shirts that said, "We support our coach."
Oh, wow.
The owner of the children's soccer club bailed him out of jail.
Disgusting.
And it is. And but it's a reality, and it's very sad, because they groom people, and these people that wrote these character references for him. I mean, he has churches now defending him because he has groomed and manipulated them. But that's what these guys do. And they start at the top. And so we need to be teaching our children that we have been conditioned to believe that titles and entities are safe. We have to teach our children that that is not the reality, that it's not the scary, gross guy that you need to be made aware of. And it's hard. It's a hard line, but we have to transition into that, because if we don't, our kids don't understand. And we can't just say anymore, you know, my parents, if anybody touches you in your privates, you need to tell us. But when you have someone who's overpowering you and who knows everything about your life, and you're 12 years old, and they say, you can't tell anyone, I know where you live, I will do this to your younger siblings.
That's right.
What do we expect a child to do?
Right. They feel like they're protecting their family now.
Yes. And so, and I think too, like in my case, my parents, it's hard. And it's hard because people don't understand. It wasn't that they didn't believe me, but they did not believe it was him, because he would never. And it wasn't until they heard that I had a one-party consent call that actually, where he admitted to everything and he was arrested on that. It wasn't until my parents heard that phone call that they were actually able to process that this was real and that this man did these things.
Wow. Well, I mean, I feel bad more for you, but, you know, also, I mean, there's, I don't know, it's kind of a mixed bag with parents, but, you know, I think nowadays people are more in tune to what a groomer is and how sociopathic that they are and deceiving that they are. But, you know, we, like they say, believe all women. Well, we need to believe it when a child who's innocent, I mean, these are innocent children. And, you know, there is an attack on our children within the schools. You know, it's one thing to have predators in the schools, but then when a child, you know, wants to say something, they're not protected even then when they come out. And so that's the tragedy in all of this. And so go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh no. And here's the thing. And we need to take our children seriously when they say that someone makes them uncomfortable. It doesn't matter the reason why. We listen to that. That doesn't mean you fly off the rooftops and say that, you know, this person is a predator.
Right.
You listen, because then what happens if you have your child come to you and they say, Mom, Mr. So-and-so makes me feel uncomfortable. And you say, oh, he doesn't mean any harm. He's just friendly. You just squashed your child and their feelings. And you told them that their intuition was not right and important enough. Then what happens is that perpetrator takes it a little bit further. Well, they already tried to tell you that they were uncomfortable and you minimized it and you downplayed it. And now next thing you know, they're being full-blown molested. How can they come to their mom and dad? Right. Oh, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. It's no big deal. No, it is a big deal. And we must listen to our children. Feelings are not negotiable. And our kids have really good instincts. And so we need to be in tune with that. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter the reason. If they voice that they're uncomfortable, we should be proud that they feel comfortable enough to tell us that. And we need to support them in that. And too many parents are not doing that.
That's right. And, you know, and there is always, you know, it's never too late to put a stop to something, you know, even if it's gone to a degree. When you catch it, parents, please stop it. And, you know, let's speak to the churches too. You know, the churches need to protect their congregation, and, you know, they should be number one in protecting innocent children, you know, and so we need to develop a culture of, you know, putting our children first. They are the most vulnerable, the most innocent, and we need to stop normalizing this and shoving things under the carpet, sweeping it under the carpet, as they say. And so, you know, we need to reverse this curse.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think too, you know, and we talked about this. There's so many different areas and educating and awareness and things. And I'm so hyper focused on policy because we have so many great organizations and people that are doing all the other things. And I defer to the then what. If we don't have a policy in place, not that it was all for nothing, but we have to strengthen that piece. And I truly believe that God has called me in this area. And I pray for discernment to stay in that, because it is such a huge piece that's missing. And people don't understand. People think that they glance at the laws, not realizing all the caveats and the loopholes and the power that the prosecutors have. And I like to give people an example and to help you really understand the power that these prosecutors have. There was a mayor in Maryland. Have you heard about this?
No.
There was a mayor in Maryland, LGBTQ plus, ABCDFG, whatever I want to be. And that's what he wrote on, and he won. And he had over 500 images of CSAM, child sexual assault material, on his government email that he possessed and distributed. This man was facing 144 years in prison. The prosecutor decided to reduce 120 years because it was approximately like 120 years because of his position and the good things he had done for the community. And he was eligible for parole at 7. So understand that this man who did this on his government email, they had proof of all of it, who is facing all this time, mark my words, he will be out of prison in 7 years. And that will be the time that he serves.
And that is the problem, is there's no consequence. Not only do we need consequence, whatever's on the books, we need to follow through and enforce the law. But you know what? I'm going to even add to this. We need stricter consequences, because we need to put the fear of God into people, that if you dabble in this and you take it that much further, there's going to be harsh consequence for you. And so that's the message we need to be sending out, not a slap on the wrist and continue to hurt our children, because you know what? We're going to lose a generation. We're going to lose our nation because of the lack of morals in our country. And so, we're going to, we have so many broken families, so many broken children. We need to reverse this. And so thank you, Kayleigh, for all that you are doing. What were you going to say?
And what is it telling victims when they when you come forward and you're brave enough, and you're, from the time you're victimized, you are fighting from everything, and you're waiting. That's the thing. Victims are always on the defense. They have no say. This person chose to do these things, and now the victim is dragged through the mud, and we are at the mercy of what these perpetrators are choosing to do. I cannot tell you guys listening, the man who sexually abused me, he can make motion after motion after motion after motion, and I have no say in it. I am just here riding his choice. I'm suffering still at the hands of his choices. He chose all of this, and I'm still suffering. And so what are we telling victims when they're brave enough to come forward? That it's not enough, and that this perpetrator can have reduced time or lesser sentence, or they can even get off. What are we telling them? That they're not important. It wasn't important. What happened to them wasn't bad enough, and it's not important enough to let this person have an actual punishment. It's wrong. It's so wrong. And it's time that it changes.
And, I always like to say that sin begets more sin. So sometimes the victims become predators themselves later in life. So we've got to put a stop to this vicious cycle. It's disgusting, it's horrific, and it will destroy America.
I agree.
Kayleigh, how can people find you? Do you have a website? Tell us your website.
My website is becauseyoustillmatter.com. And that comes from, I always like to share where that comes from. When I found out that my perpetrator was attempting to have his probation lifted, it was 3 weeks of hell. I had 3 weeks to process, wait a minute, this is reality, and we're going to court. That's it. I had 3 weeks after 13 years. And I was in a really dark place, and I was like, I'm going to court. I deserve to be heard. I'm not going to court. He doesn't deserve any more of my time. And then I would say to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this to myself? Because you still matter. That's why. All this time has gone by. This is happening, but why are you doing this? Because you still matter. And I'm fighting for you because you still matter. And that is where that comes from for me. So my website is becauseyoustillmatter.com.
And we will put that in the description. Also, what is your Instagram handle? The
Kayleigh Kozak.
Okay, great. Well, Kayleigh,
you are
if there's more, we will put it in the description. Is there any other social media that you have?
I mean, I do some, but Instagram is where I kind of throw everything, that's going on. And you can count on me for exposing all the things surrounding this topic and putting out truthful information that no one else is talking about regarding this topic.
Well, that's how we should all be. We really need to be, we need to stop putting, not you and I, but, people in general, we need to not put our head in the sand, or is that what I'm trying to say? Yes. We need to confront, we need to be fearless and not be afraid of, the other side. They're loud, they're vocal. We need to be louder, and we need to be more vocal and show a tremendous amount of courage, because, our nation is counting on it. But, we are saving the life and souls of children, innocent children. That should always be our motivation, is love for the innocent. So, Kayleigh, you are amazing. I thank God for you, and I will continue to pray for you. Everyone pray for Kayleigh, and pray for this legislation that she is, putting forth, because it's doing amazing work. So we give glory to God, but you are definitely have a servant's heart, and you definitely are a fighter. So thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. And I cannot wait to meet you in just a few weeks.
I know. Likewise. All righty. Well, thank you everyone for joining the show, and we will put all the links in the bio. God bless you all. Have a good day.
This show is brought to you by Ceci Truman.